A woman decked out in blinding neon yoga attire, gripping a Bluetooth speaker blasting so-called meditation music, stormed up to my humble lakeside craft booth and screamed right in my face, "You're throwing off the entire spiritual balance of this lake." That's when it hit me, I was about to get dragged into a battle I never asked for. And believe me, nothing could have prepared me for how far I'd go to stand my ground. Let me ask you something. Should someone really be allowed to shut down a booth selling hand-carved woodwork and homemade candles? Just because they do yoga? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, maybe because what happened next might make you rethink everything you thought you knew about your own neighborhood. Let's rewind to where it all began. Blue Brush Lake, nestled in Door County, Wisconsin, is lined with peaceful wooden cabins that hug the shoreline of water so clear it mirrors the sunrise like scattered diamonds. My name's Toby Garrison, I'm 32. And I inherited my grandfather's old cabinet and his love for woodworking. As a kid, I spent every summer here with Grandpa Joe, tagging along behind him in the cool morning mist while he showed me how to track deer. One foggy dawn when I was just 8, he placed a weathered hand on my shoulder and said, "Son, this land's been in our family since before Wisconsin was even a state. Promise me you'll protect it and no matter what comes for it." I promised, not realizing that someday I'd have to keep that vow in a way neither of us could have imagined. My wife, Mallory, she's 34, studied law for 3 years before discovering her real passion, crafting hand-poured candles. She'd work in our cozy kitchen, infusing the air with the comforting blend of beeswax and pine oils, capturing the scent of a Wisconsin forest in every jar. Meanwhile, I'd spend mornings on our porch, carving delicate animals from red pine, the steady rhythm of waves brushing the lake shore providing the perfect background music. Life was simple, beautiful, surrounded by kind neighbors who had become like family. Old Pete who ran the bait shop, the Martinez family whose kids fed ducks by the dock, and sweet Mrs. Henderson who dropped off warm cookies every Sunday after church. Visitors often strolled past during their lakeside walks, drawn in by the soft scrape of my carving tools or the rich scent drifting from Mallory's workspace. One couple from Milwaukee, still glowing from their honeymoon, spent nearly an hour with us. After buying 6 candles, the bride clutched one to her chest and said, "This smells just like our honeymoon cabin in the North Woods. Every time we light one, it'll bring us back to this perfect weekend." Moments like that happened all the time, little connections that felt deeply meaningful in a world that often felt disconnected. After months of spontaneous sales, Mallory and I decided to make it official. Every weekend, we set up a small booth, Blue Brush Crafts. We displayed my carved pine birds, her forest-scented candles, and the whimsical miniature cabin keychains I had started creating. The community's response was heartwarming. Neighbors like Jake would stop by with a cup of coffee, chatting while admiring my latest work. Everyone kept saying the same thing. Finally, something special happening at the lake. Our little booth turned into more than just a business and became a gathering spot, a place where the community came together like never before. That peace shattered on our 3rd weekend. A hot pink SUV rolled up, plastered in Namaste Goddess stickers. Trouble had officially arrived. Out stepped Priscilla Dodgert, and I knew instantly we were in for it. She wore a highlighter bright crop top that practically glowed, leopard leggings that made my eyes ache, and sneakers that glittered with every step. But the true assault came from her speaker, blasting chanting music loud enough to stir bears from hibernation. To top it off, a wave of sickly sweet vanilla perfume hit me like a freight train. I instinctively took a step back. "I'm Priscilla Dodgert, president of this HOA," she announced, her voice laced with self-importance. Her Bluetooth speaker continued humming some droning mantra as she scrutinized our booth like a crime scene investigator. "Do you have the appropriate permits for this commercial operation?" she asked, eyes narrowing. I tried to explain, politely, that we were simply sharing a few handmade goods, nothing disruptive. But the more I spoke, the more exaggerated her expressions became. "I'm building a wellness sanctuary for the entire state of Wisconsin," she proclaimed, throwing her arms dramatically toward the lake. "This tacky craft display completely ruins the atmosphere I'm cultivating." The way she emphasized tacky made my jaw tighten, but Mallory gave my hand a gentle squeeze, her silent signal to stay cool. I could already see her inner lawyer taking notes. Priscilla wasn't done. She pulled out her phone, snapping dozens of photos of our booth from every imaginable angle, muttering things like commercial infringement and environmental imbalance. Then, with a final flourish, she delivered the warning, "You'll be hearing from me. I will defend the lake's spiritual energy." As her pink SUV rolled away, the cloying scent of vanilla lingered like a threat. Mallory looked at me with concern in her eyes. "Babe, I have a really bad feeling about her." I nodded, the sinking feeling already taking root in my chest. "I think we just met our nemesis," I said. And I was right. Before things got truly ugly, we decided it was best to attend our first home meeting just to get a sense of who, or what, we were up against. It was held in Mrs. Patterson's living room, with a dozen neighbors awkwardly arranged on folding chairs in a circle. From the second we arrived, Priscilla took over, wearing yet another neon ensemble and speaking with the intensity of a televangelist mid-sermon. "I have a vision," she said, holding a rhinestone-covered water bottle like a sacred relic. "Our lakefront transformed into Wisconsin's ultimate wellness retreat." She laid out her bizarre list of rules. No wind chimes because they disturb the energy flow, cabin colors limited to earth tones only, and under no circumstances would commercial activity be allowed as it lowered the community's vibrational frequency. The rest of the room looked baffled. A few people exchanged glances that screamed, "Who is this woman and what planet did she come from?" I leaned over to Mallory and whispered, "Did she just say wind chimes disrupt energy?" Mallory squeezed my hand again, trying not to giggle, but we both knew this wasn't someone we could reason with, especially when she caught our whisper and her eyes locked onto us like lasers. Priscilla locked eyes with us, her gaze sharpened to a laser point. "Some people resist positive change," she said, her tone dripping with faux serenity, "but spiritual evolution cannot be stopped by those clinging to materialism." The meeting wrapped up with most residents wearing the same expression of equal parts confusion and quiet dread. It was clear no one knew how to handle the woman who'd shown up and started preaching wellness like a prophet with a Pinterest board. 3 days later, the real strike landed in the form of a certified letter. The envelope was plastered with a gaudy pink lotus logo, all but screaming spirituality, but make it corporate. Inside was a formal cease and desist notice accusing us of violating residential zoning laws, creating traffic congestion, generating excessive noise, and, most bizarrely, disrupting community wellness initiatives. The tone was hostile, the language absurd. We were given 7 days to shut down our booth or face $500 a day fines. I reread the letter 3 times, shaking my head in disbelief. "Excessive noise," I said aloud. "The loons on this lake are louder than us." Mallory's eyes narrowed with focus. Her legal instincts kicked in immediately. "I'm looking up the ordinances," she said, already pulling out her laptop. "There has to be a way to fight this." We spent the next 2 days walking door to door, talking with longtime neighbors. The deeper we dug, the more troubling the picture became. Tom Richards, who lived beside the boat launch, seemed torn. "I like your booth," he said hesitantly. "Boot a broken bar, I dunno. Priscilla keeps saying she'll bring in tourists, raise property values. Maybe there's a middle ground?" His uncertainty echoed a larger problem. People didn't quite know what to make of Priscilla or her agenda. Then Mrs. Henderson, a lifelong resident and local oracle of sorts, pulled us aside. "That girl, she moved in 8 months ago," she whispered. "Failed at running some yoga place in Madison. Came up here with a fat inheritance, calling it her a spiritual rebirth. She's been going house to house trying to sell folks on her a vision. Telling them they'd better get on board or be left behind." Suddenly, it all made sense. Priscilla wasn't just eccentric, she was executing a calculated takeover. Exactly 1 week after the letter, she returned. I was setting up what might be our final booth when the pink SUV rolled up again. This time she wore a full yoga outfit, headband and all, and carried what she claimed was a professional sound meter, though it looked suspiciously like a phone app. "I'm documenting noise violations," she declared, waving the phone like it was a sacred relic, "for my report to the city." But that wasn't why she was really there. "I'm turning this area into a premium wellness destination," she said with theatrical flair. "I cannot let cheap crafts ruin the vibe and devalue the entire aesthetic." And then, With the melodrama of a daytime soap villain, she delivered her final threat. "If you don't comply with my cease and desist, I'll report you for environmental violations." I could feel my temper rising, my fists clenching. Every instinct told me to fire back to tell this glittered-up invader exactly what I thought of her vision. But Mallory reached over and touched my arm, grounding me like she always did. "Stay calm, honey," she whispered. "We need to be smarter than she is." That night, while I brooded on the porch, Mallory worked late into the night, combing through HOA bylaws. What she uncovered gave us a glimmer of hope. Turns out Priscilla had been breaking rules left and right, letting her dogs run off-leash, throwing loud yoga parties that went well past the community noise curfew. We documented everything, compiled witness statements, and submitted a formal complaint to the HOA. For 48 hours, we felt hopeful, like maybe, just maybe, truth would win out. But then the board's response arrived. Our complaint was dismissed without even a review. And worsey they hit us back with a counter-accusation, harassment of a board member. That's when we learned the final twist of the knife. Priscilla had made allies. 2 of the 5 board members, recent retirees from Chicago, had fallen for her utopian sales pitch. Increased property values, cultural prestige, a slice of goop-inspired paradise. That weekend, with hearts heavy, we packed up our booth like it was the last time. As I loaded the final box, Priscilla celebrated her victory with the cruelest twist imaginable, a gratitude yoga session staged directly in front of our cabin. Her Bluetooth speaker blared Om Mani Padme Hum from dawn until dusk, drowning out the birds, the breeze, and every last bit of peace we'd once known. The irony hit me like a slap at this woman, who screamed about our noise pollution, now turning our home into her personal sound bath. That night, as the mantras finally fell silent and the lake returned to stillness, Mallory looked up from her laptop, eyes sharp with purpose. The fire in her gaze reminded me of the woman I met in law school years ago, the one who refused to lose a single argument. "We're not done," she said simply. And I believed her. "Honey, I have a crazy idea," Mallory said softly, "but I need time to research it properly." I didn't press her. Instead, I looked out at the lake, the moonlight rippling over water that had belonged to our family for generations, and felt like I was missing something, some overlooked piece of family history, waiting to be remembered. Maybe that piece held the key to stopping Priscilla once and for all. But Priscilla struck again before I could follow that thought. This time, the attack came from a direction we hadn't anticipated. City government. She'd taken our neighborhood dispute and escalated it into a municipal issue, filing what she called an environmental impact assessment with the Door County Planning Office. Her accusations were, if nothing else, imaginative. She claimed our modest craft booth was polluting the lake, causing traffic congestion, and disturbing the local wildlife. 2 weeks later, a city inspector knocked on our door. His name was Frank Morrison, a grim man with a clipboard and the demeanor of someone who preferred penalties over problem-solving. The inspection was thorough and, frankly, humiliating. He examined every part of our tiny operation, how we handled waste, where our customers parked, even what kind of paint we used on signs. "You're operating a commercial business in a residential zone without proper permits," he said flatly, jotting notes like a machine. "The complaint alleges environmental damage and traffic disruption." I tried to explain that we only sold a handful of items each weekend, mostly to neighbors or passing tourists. But Morrison wasn't interested in context. He handed me a citation for $1,200 and an injunction banning all business activity on our property, effective immediately. Mallory's face went pale, her hands trembled as she signed the acknowledgement form, trying to maintain the same composure I'd seen her use in courtrooms and funerals. But that night, I found her in the kitchen, shoulders shaking as she cried. It was the first time I'd ever seen her like that. "I've researched everything," she sobbed, surrounded by open law books and highlighted legal articles. "How can one person be allowed to do this? We never hurt anyone. We just a broken bar. We just tried to share something we love with our community." Seeing here my brilliant, steady wife crushed by this injustice lit something in me. I wrapped my arms around her and made a quiet promise. "We're not giving up," I whispered. "There has to be another way to fight this, and I'm going to find it." The next morning, needing something physical to channel my helpless anger, I finally took on a long-delayed task, cleaning the basement. Somewhere among the dusty bins of tangled Christmas lights and broken furniture, I remembered something my father had told me decades ago: a leather trunk, tucked away with instructions from my grandfather and never throw it out. He'd said it might matter someday. That day had come. I found the trunk buried deep behind old storage and pried it open with trembling hands. Inside were bundles of fragile documents dating back to the 1800s, some maps drawn by hand, faded hunting licenses from before Wisconsin was even fully settled. And then I found it, a formal deed in elaborate script, the heading embossed and regal: Blue Brush Lake A Garrison Family Hunting Reserve, established 1892. I ran upstairs, heart pounding, and spread the documents out on our kitchen table. "Mallory," I called, "you need to see this." The transformation in her was immediate. The moment she saw the documents, something lit up inside her. She grabbed her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys. "Section 29.889, she said, barely above a whisper. "Traditional family hunting rights are preserved in perpetuity. They can still be reactivated with proper documentation. Our research confirmed it. The rights had never been revoked, just forgotten." As development crept in over the years and the community changed, no one had remembered or bothered to check. My great-great-grandfather, it turned out, was a respected hunter and conservationist. He had worked with the territorial government to create this preserve, not just to protect game, but to safeguard the entire lake ecosystem. And, as his descendants, we still had legal rights over its use. If we reactivated those rights, we'd have the power to regulate public activity on the lake, including any commercial events Priscilla was planning. Still, I hesitated. "I don't know," I said, staring at the 19th century papers strewn across our table. "This feels a broken bar wrong, like we're bending old laws to solve a modern problem, like we're cheating." Mallory looked at me with eyes filled with both exhaustion and clarity. "Honey, what Priscilla is doing isn't fair either. She's using her money, her connections, and legal scare tactics to destroy something small but meaningful, something that brings joy. Maybe your great-great-grandfather knew the land would need protecting someday. Maybe he left us these rights for exactly this reason." And in that moment, I believed her. From the start, my great-grandfather had made one thing clear: this land was to be protected from anyone who sought to exploit it for personal gain. And Priscilla? She was making it her mission to do just that. Her provocations grew bolder by the day. She organized an event she dubbed the Victory Meditation Festival, drawing nearly 50 participants. They set up right in front of our cabin, complete with professional-grade sound equipment that blared mantras from sunrise to sunset. The irony was nauseating. Online, she celebrated the removal of commercial pollution from what she now called the sacred lake environment, complete with filtered photos of our empty craft booth. Her posts oozed self-righteous triumph, completely oblivious to the legal tidal wave about to hit her. As I watched her lead a yoga session on what she clearly believed was conquered ground, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about losing a craft booth. This was about whether outsiders with entitlement and money could bulldoze through long-standing communities and reshape them into whatever fit their curated lifestyle brands. That evening, after the last of the yoga mats had been packed up and the chanting stopped echoing across the water, I stood alone on our porch. The moonlight shimmered on the lake's surface, the same way it had when I was a child. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice again, from decades ago. "Promise me you'll always protect it, no matter what tries to take it away." Maybe he didn't just leave me a cabin. Maybe he left me the tools to protect what mattered. Maybe, I said aloud to Mallory, who stepped out beside me, great-grandfather gave us more than a place to stay. Maybe he gave us a way to fight back. The next morning, we began the process of turning a 19th century hunting preserve into a 21st century legal defense against HOA tyranny. Finding the right attorney for such an unconventional case proved difficult until we found Buck Hardwell, a wiry, sharp-eyed lawyer based in Green Bay. Buck specialized in traditional land rights and obscure property law. When we laid the aged documents out on his desk, he handled them like sacred artifacts. "This," he said, eyes scanning the deed and permits, "is an extremely rare case. But it's absolutely viable, provided we document everything properly and follow the right procedures." He leaned back, tapping the desk thoughtfully. "I've only seen 3 similar cases in 20 years. 2 were successful, the third a broken bar well. They didn't prepare the way you clearly have." Then came the reality check. "But I need to be honest with you," Buck said. "The state may challenge your reactivation. Your neighbors might object to the hunting designation, and if you see a broken bar, court costs will be significant. This is a high-risk, high-reward move. No guarantees." Mallory and I exchanged a long look. The gravity of the decision pressed down like an invisible weight. "What's the alternative?" she asked softly. "Just walk away, let her turn this place into her personal retreat center and pretend we were never here?" I thought of my grandfather, of the generations before him who had fished these waters, hunted in these woods, and poured their sweat into this land. I thought of the neighbors who'd come by each weekend, grateful for something handmade, something real. "We're going for it," I said. The resolve in my voice surprised even me. "Whatever it takes, we fight." Buck gave a slow nod and reached out to shake our hands. "Then let's make some history." What followed was a blur of meticulous preparation. We spent weeks scanning and cataloging every scrap of evidence from the leather trunk. We contacted the Wisconsin Historical Society for authentication, had the maps professionally photographed, and cross-verified all the permits and deeds. Mallory worked with genealogy experts to establish a clear, unbroken line of inheritance. I focused on reconstructing the exact borders of the original hunting reserve using both historical and satellite maps. Together, we assembled a comprehensive legal application titled, Reactivation of Historical Family Hunting Preserve at Blue Brush Lake. It totaled 67 pages of meticulously prepared documentation and historical context. One night, bone-tired and bleary-eyed from weeks of legal prep, we took the rowboat out onto the lake. The sunset washed the water in gold and soft lavender. For the first time in weeks, we weren't strategizing. We were just a broken bar there. "This," Mallory said quietly, trailing her fingers in the water, "is what we're fighting for. Not just our business, but this feeling, this home." We floated in silence, wrapped in the kind of peace that can only come from knowing exactly what's worth protecting. Meanwhile, Priscilla's campaign of confidence surged forward. Her social media presence exploded with live streams labeled Transforming Rural Wisconsin, where she stood at the Lake Shore laying out a vision of turning the area into a wellness destination that would, in her words, elevate the consciousness of the Midwest. Her rhetoric grew increasingly grandiose and disconnected from any local reality. "Some people cling to outdated ways of thinking," she said during one live session, clearly referencing us. "But true spiritual evolution requires us to transcend material attachments and embrace higher purposes." The comments were full of glowing hearts and affirmations from urban followers who had no understanding of rural life, but who bought into her promise of spiritual transformation. Her Blue Brush Wellness Retreat was now a full-blown campaign, complete with glossy promotional materials featuring stock photos of. You can continue the next part here. Let me know if you want help with that section. 2. Priscilla's marketing campaign reached peak delusion. Her booking site, slick and full of stock images of tranquil lakes and hyper-flexible yoga instructors, promised a transformative lakeside wellness experience for just $75 a ticket. She'd locked in gourmet food trucks from Milwaukee and Madison, flown in yoga instructors from Chicago and Minneapolis, and arranged for lifestyle bloggers to cover what she grandly called the rise of rural wellness culture. Everything was poised for her personal victory lap. What she didn't know was that a 130-year-old hunting preserve was quietly coiling beneath her perfect plans, ready to strike. Our appointment with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources felt more like a court hearing than a formality. Officer Janet Mills, straight-backed and unsmiling, regarded us with polite skepticism until she began examining the materials. "I've worked in natural resources for 15 years, she said slowly, flipping through our documentation. "And I've never seen such a thorough, well-substantiated claim to traditional hunting rights." She listed off the highlights: verified genealogical records, historical society authentication, original territorial documentation. "This," she said finally, looking up at us, "is precisely what Wisconsin's heritage preservation laws were designed to protect." Then came the part that stunned even us. "If your application is approved, You'll have legal regulatory authority within 500 years of the lake shoreline. That includes noise ordinances, event permissions, and the right to restrict public access. It was exactly what we needed. The 2-week waiting period that followed felt like an eternity. Each day started with hope and ended with tension. I paced the house. Mallory barely slept, spending her nights cross-referencing local zoning laws and watching the moon reflect off the lake. Meanwhile, Priscilla was preparing for her coronation. She installed signs reading Blue Brush Wellness Sanctuary, a quiet zone, plastered flyers around town, and posted countdown videos for her transformational weekend. Her certainty was absolute. The Sunday before our decision, Mallory and I sat on the porch, silent under the starlight, unsure if we were on the brink of a brilliant win or a crushing defeat. Then, Monday morning arrived. Officer Mills greeted us at the DNR office with a warm, knowing smile. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Garrison," she said, holding out a formal certificate bearing the state seal. "Your application has been approved. Blue Brush Lake is now officially recognized as the Garrison Family Historical Hunting Preserve." The document spelled it out in elegant legal language. We had full regulatory control over all public activity within the designated zone. We could set noise limits, regulate access, prohibit commercial gatherings. We laughed a genuine, exhausted, disbelieving laughter. Back home, we sprang into action. First stop, the local print shop, where we ordered bold, unmistakable signs. Private hunting preserve, a public by law, restricted by statute. We installed them strategically on every approach to the lake, on our property line, and, most importantly, in the center of the planned yoga festival zone. We put up motion-activated cameras and researched enforcement protocols. We now had the power to issue trespass warnings, call law enforcement, and legally shut down any unauthorized gathering within our zone. It was official, it was airtight, and it was devastating. The community's reaction was swift and mixed. Mrs. Henderson stopped by with a plate of cookies and a wink. "I don't know what you two just pulled," she said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "but if it keeps that woman from turning this place into a parking lot for chakras, I'm on your side." But not everyone cheered. Tom Richards, one of the more level-headed neighbors, approached us with concern. "I get that you're trying to stop Priscilla, but to Broken Bar, a hunting zone? Some of us have kids who play near the lake." Mallory calmly explained, "It's a legal designation. We're not actually hunting. We're enforcing traditional land use rights to protect the lake and not using firearms. No one's in danger." It took a few clarifying conversations, but eventually, most neighbors understood and many quietly approved. Then came Saturday. The weather was pristine. Food trucks lined the road early. Yoga mats unfurled across the grass. Instructors tested their microphones. 200 people had bought tickets for Priscilla's so-called life-changing retreat. She'd spent more than $15,000 on sound systems, catering, instructor fees, and promotional materials. Local reporters were on site. Lifestyle bloggers were live-streaming every moment. It was perfect, until I arrived. I walked calmly into the center of her event space, signs in hand, DNR certified, state-backed, legally indisputable. As I drove the first post into the ground, Priscilla abandoned any pretense of inner peace. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked, her voice cracking as she stormed toward me. Gone was the Zen mask. All that remained was panic. "You can't just put up fake signs to sabotage my legal event." I turned to her calmly and handed her a copy of the official certificate. "This isn't sabotage," I said. "It's state-recognized historical preservation law. You're in violation." Her eyes darted between the paper, the signs, and the gathering crowd. Confusion rippled through her volunteers. Guests began murmuring. A food truck operator approached cautiously, unsure whether to proceed. For the first time, Priscilla looked uncertain and afraid. The transformation she'd promised wasn't going to happen. Not here, not now, not on our lake. Priscilla's perfect plan was unraveling in front of a live audience. Attendees began to gather around, their cheerful anticipation quickly giving way to confusion. These were paying guests, as some of them had traveled for hours and shelled out significant money, and it was becoming obvious that something was very wrong. I handed Priscilla the official DNR certificate. Her hands trembled slightly as she scanned the page. I watched her expression morph, first confusion, then disbelief, and finally full-blown horror as her eyes locked on the embossed state seal and the language outlining our legal authority over the lake and surrounding area. "This is impossible," she repeated, voice rising toward hysteria. "You can't have hunting rights in the middle of a residential neighborhood." But she was wrong, and the moment she realized it, things escalated fast. She whipped out her phone and called the police, demanding they arrest me for vandalism and willful sabotage of a legal business. When 2 patrol cars rolled in, lights flashing, I was ready. I calmly handed over our documentation to the officers. They reviewed the DNR certification, ran it through their system, and within minutes, the senior officer turned to Priscilla. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "this certificate is valid. This is a state-recognized private hunting preserve. Your event violates the legal restrictions in place. You'll need to shut it down." The announcement hit like a thunderclap. Guests started murmuring, casting nervous glances at each other and at Priscilla. The sense of excitement that had filled the air just minutes before turned thick with uncertainty. Then the backlash began. A woman from Madison, who had driven 3 hours for the retreat, stepped forward angrily. "You didn't get permits? Are you serious?" "I took time off work for this." A yoga instructor from Chicago, red-eyed and stunned, said, "I canceled 2 other gigs to be here. How am I supposed to get home now? My return flight's not until Monday." More voices joined in. 200 frustrated people demanded refunds. Food truck owners threatened to invoice Priscilla for wasted inventory and setup costs. The situation spun wildly out of control. A reporter from the Door County Herald, originally there to cover a feel-good story about wellness and community, found herself documenting a full-blown fiasco. She snapped pictures of the chaos, interviewed disappointed guests, and filmed the precise moment when Priscilla's public persona finally collapsed. Under the pressure, Priscilla cracked. Gone was the serene host. She began shrieking, hurling yoga blocks and rolled mats across the grass, stomping on a meditation banner as she wailed about her destroyed investment and ruined future. "I put everything into this," she screamed, half sobbing. "My savings, my name, my career." The spectacle was undeniably and unmissable. Dozens of phones recorded her breakdown from every angle. Even the police had to step in to restore order and manage the mass of angry attendees who were demanding answers and refunds she couldn't give. By late afternoon, the retreat site was a ghost town. The food trucks left with their full coolers. Disillusioned yoga fans packed up their mats, cursing the weekend and vowing never to return. And there, in the middle of it all, sat Priscilla alone among toppled folding tables, windblown banners, and scattered cushions. From our front porch, Mallory and I watched in silence as the last car pulled away. "I almost feel bad for her," Mallory whispered. "Watching someone's dream collapse in real time, a broken bar, it's harder to witness than I expected." I nodded. I felt the Samia until I saw Priscilla on her phone, pacing furiously, her eyes cutting toward our house as she gestured wildly. She wasn't defeated. She was regrouping. The battle might have ended, but the war had only just begun. It didn't take long. Within a week, we were served with a formal lawsuit. Priscilla had hired Davidson Associates, a high-powered Milwaukee law firm that specialized in property disputes and municipal law. The paperwork was thick, aggressive, and expensive. She was suing us for $75,000 in damages, citing abuse of antiquated statutes, intentional interference with commercial activity, and creation of a public nuisance. The lawsuit also named the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, alleging that they had failed to conduct a proper environmental review before granting us preserve status. The cover letter from attorney Davidson was clinical and confident. It suggested that our claim to historic hunting rights would not withstand modern judicial scrutiny, and that Priscilla's business had suffered irreparable harm due to the exploitative misuse of outdated legislation. She was coming at us with everything she had. But while she was busy preparing her legal assault, the community and even the state HOA was becoming increasingly curious. A broken bar as the legal drama unfolded. Our small community began conducting its own quiet investigation into Priscilla, the enigmatic newcomer who had turned our peaceful lakeside into a battlefield. What they uncovered was explosive. It turned out that Priscilla had been secretly negotiating with Lakeshore Development Corporation to sell off large sections of lakefront property. The goal? A high-end commercial yoga resort. If the deal went through, she stood to make $2.30 million while transforming our tranquil residential lake into a bustling weekend destination teeming with tourists, traffic, and noise. The truth surfaced through an anonymous tip to the Door County Herald. The reporter who had once documented Priscilla's meltdown now had screenshots of damning text messages between her and Lakeshore execs. Her plan had been chillingly strategic. In the texts, she outlined how she would dismantle local opposition to development, shutting down small businesses, discrediting community leaders, and then positioning herself as the voice of the neighborhood. One message read, "Once I eliminate the local resistance to change, we can move forward with property acquisition." These simple people think in crafts and candles. I think in transformation and profit. The community's response was swift and furious. Residents who had once been curious or even supportive now saw her for what she really was, not a protector of serenity and wellness, but a profiteer in yoga pants. Her soothing speeches and faux spiritual branding were nothing more than a cover for a multi-million-dollar land grab. An emergency home meeting was called for that Thursday. The agenda was short: remove Priscilla from the board for deception and conflicts of interest. Mrs. Henderson, a longtime resident of 30 years, spoke for many. That woman lied to us all. She talked about preserving peace while planning to bulldoze it. She was never here for the community, only the cash. Meanwhile, our court hearing took place on a gray, rainy Wednesday morning at the Door County Courthouse. Judge Patricia Wong presided over a packed courtroom filled not only with curious residents and journalists, but even a few attendees from Priscilla's failed retreat, who showed up hoping to see her held accountable. Attorney Davidson, representing Priscilla, argued that hunting zones posed a safety risk and that outdated laws shouldn't override current zoning standards. His arguments were slick and polished but disconnected from the reality of our situation. Then it was our turn. Buck Hardwell delivered a powerful defense grounded in legal precedent and land-use history. But the real turning point came when Mallory stood and asked to address the court not as a lawyer, but as a resident. "Your Honor," she said, voice clear and steady, "I don't speak today as a legal expert. I speak as someone who's watched a peaceful community get trampled by someone who never asked permission to change it." She painted a picture of life before Priscilla: the lakeside craft booth, the quiet weekends, the sense of belonging. Then she detailed the harassment we faced, the legal threats, and the attempts to destroy our way of life under the guise of wellness. "We didn't use our hunting rights as a weapon," she said. "We used them as a shield to protect something beautiful from being paved over for someone else's profit." The final blow came when Hartwell submitted new evidence, the messages revealing Priscilla's development deal. A representative from Lakeshore Corporation took the stand, confirming the $2.3 million offer and its condition that Priscilla eliminate local opposition. Priscilla's motivations were laid bare in front of the entire courtroom. When she finally took the stand, her testimony was defensive, evasive, and clearly fueled by financial frustration and not any genuine grievance. The media frenzy exploded. Local news ran headlines like, "HOA President's Secret $2.3 million Development Deal Exposed. Yoga Guru's Wellness Empire Crumbles Under Community Backlash." The hashtag #LakeKaren began trending, filled with stories of HOA abuses and betrayal. People across the region followed the story like a slow-motion train wreck. Judge Wong's ruling was thorough and devastating for Priscilla. "Our hunting preserve was ruled fully valid and legally enforceable under Wisconsin's historical preservation statutes." She dismissed Priscilla's claims entirely and ordered her to cover court costs and our legal fees totaling $8,200. Most importantly, she issued a permanent restraining order preventing any further harassment from Priscilla and formally acknowledged our legal authority over the preserve. In her opinion, Judge Wong wrote that the case reflected bad faith legal maneuvering and an abuse of the court system for personal financial gain. Priscilla's schemes were now permanently etched into public record. The fallout was immediate. At the emergency home meeting, 89% of residents voted to remove Priscilla from the board. Mrs. Henderson was elected president on a platform of responsible development and respect for longtime residents. Priscilla's yoga group dissolved practically overnight. Within a week, a for sale sign appeared in her front yard. Her deal with Lakeshore Development collapsed entirely, with the company citing negative community response and reputational risk as reasons for pulling out. That evening, Mallory and I stood on our porch, watching the sun set across the lake now legally protected under our family's 130-year-old hunting rights. It wasn't just a win, it was justice, delivered with a satisfying twist of historical irony. The transformation that followed was as hardening as it was fast. Under Mrs. Henderson's leadership, the HOA adopted a refreshingly practical approach. Her first act was to form a community enhancement committee focused on supporting initiatives that united the neighborhood and not divided it. Blue Brush Crafts reopened with renewed energy and a brand new sign, family-owned since 2024, protected by historical rights, estate. 1892. Beneath it, in smaller letters that made locals laugh, authentic community values. No fake gurus welcome. Business boomed. Neighbors who had once kept to themselves now made regular trips to the HOA, often bringing friends or relatives to hear the now legendary story of how a wellness empire fell, and how a community rose up to protect what mattered most. With Priscilla gone and the HOA drama behind us, something unexpected happened. People started showing up. Tourists began visiting specifically to see the now famous hunting zone that had saved a small business from extinction. Our humble craft booth had become a kind of folk landmark. The local newspaper ran a front-page story titled "How a 130-Year-Old Law Saved Small Business," which was picked up by regional outlets and even mentioned in a national piece about creative legal defenses and HOA disputes. Orders started pouring in from all over Wisconsin and neighboring states. Many customers said they'd heard about our story and wanted to support the family who beat corporate yoga with a hunting license. Meanwhile, Priscilla's downfall continued to unravel like a slow-motion car crash. Her failed lawsuit left her drowning in legal fees, compounded by the refunds she had to issue to disgruntled retreat attendees. When the development deal collapsed, so did her hopes of a financial windfall. With no income and mounting debt, she was forced to sell her house at a steep loss just to avoid bankruptcy. Her once polished social media profile full of inspirational quotes and curated photos of spiritual retreats were soon flooded with mocking comments and angry backlash. Within weeks, she scrubbed everything and vanished from the internet entirely. I'll admit, I took a bit of harmless satisfaction in our victory. Using our new authority as official operators of a private hunting preserve, I installed a discreet speaker system that played soft bird song and gentle forest sounds every morning at 6 a.m. Entirely within our rights and pleasantly peaceful. Unless, of course, you preferred synthetic meditation tracks blasted at full volume. Mallory marked the occasion by creating a new candle scent called Victory Cedar. It quickly became our bestseller. People would come in and ask specifically for the candle that defeated the HOA Karen. Our cabin's updated sign read, "Priscilla Free Zone since 2024. Love tranquility, stay as quiet as you were when you lost your lawsuit." 6 months after our courtroom win, we organized the first ever Garrison Family Heritage Festival right on the very land Priscilla had planned to turn into a luxury wellness retreat. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. More than 500 people attended. The festival celebrated real community values, local crafts, family traditions, and the hunting heritage my great-great-grandfather helped preserve. There were live demonstrations of woodworking and candle making, historical exhibits about Door County's rural past, and music from local bands who understood what it made this place special. It was magical. Children learned crafts from their grandparents. Teenagers asked questions about their town's history. Families from neighboring communities came to experience something genuine. A reporter from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel came and published a beautiful feature on how historical preservation laws can safeguard local identity from commercial exploitation. The piece contrasted vibrant images of our community festival with grainy photos of Priscilla's failed yoga retreat, empty tents, abandoned equipment, and frustrated faces. Then something happened that truly brought the story full circle. Tom Richards, our neighbor who had once wavered between our craft booth and Priscilla's promises, approached us with his wife and kids. "I owe you both an apology," he said. Visibly embarrassed, I got caught up in the idea of change and progress. I didn't realize what we were about to lose. Watching this festival, seeing everyone so happy, I understand now. Priscilla would have ruined what makes this place special. His wife nodded. We thought we needed more sophistication and property value boosts. Turns out, what we already had was priceless. That night, after the last lantern was packed away and the lake returned to its natural stillness, I sat on our porch with a legal pad in my lap and wrote something that had been on my heart for weeks. Dear Grandpa Joe, I finally understand what you meant about protecting this land. It wasn't just about keeping ownership, it was about keeping what made it sacred. Your old hunting license didn't just protect a patch of forest, it saved a community from being paved over by someone who saw only dollar signs. I kept my promise. I used the tools you left me, history, knowledge, and the law, to guard the spirit of this place. The land is safe, the community is strong, and the lake still reflects the morning sun, just like it did when you first showed me how to track deer through the mist. This experience changed us in ways we hadn't expected. I learned that standing your ground doesn't always mean shouting, it means knowing your rights and using them wisely. That a dusty old law can be more powerful than the most expensive attorney when wielded with conviction. Mallory rediscovered her passion for the law and made the decision to go back to school, finishing her degree with a focus on property rights and community law, determined to help other small towns defend themselves from predatory development. And our marriage, it grew stronger through it all. We came out of this battle with a deeper connection, and not just to each other, but to the land, the community, and the legacy we now carry forward. So that's the story of how we turned an HOA Karen into an ex-resident using a hunting law older than the state of Wisconsin itself. The moral: justice might take its time, but it shows up eventually. Creativity and persistence can overcome powerful opponents. And never, ever underestimate the value of knowing your rights or the forgotten treasures buried in your grandfather's trunk. Oh, and one last thing, karma is real. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a 130-year-old hunting preserve that plays birdsong at sunrise. Have you ever discovered a forgotten law or surprising piece of history about your own property? Share your story in the comments. You never know what protections might be waiting in your backyard. This story might be over, but Ya Stories has a whole vault of mayhem waiting. Choose your next rabbit hole wisely.